Ever wondered if you could trick Google into ranking your business higher by faking things like engagement and clicks? Well, we tested this, and the results may surprise you. Let's see what happened when we asked hundreds of people to manipulate this restaurant's ranking on Google by simply clicking on their Google business profile.
Back in June, Rand Fishkin decided to test if click-through rate is still a ranking factor, and if click-through rate manipulation still worked. On our webinar, he asked hundreds of viewers to go to Google, search for Vietnamese restaurant Seattle, and click on a restaurant that was on page 2. We told Rand that we were going to track the long-term impact to see if this still worked. So what did you find, Joy?
So yes, click-through rate or CTR manipulation does still work. This restaurant went from the second page up to position 2 pretty quickly. But that really wasn't the question I wanted to answer. I really wanted to know, do these rankings actually stick long-term? So I actually set up this restaurant to track their rankings daily for several months after we did this test.
What did you find out?
So the gains from the CTR manipulation definitely didn't last. As you can see here, this business's ranking started much higher, but then as time went on, they kind of went back to where they were before we did this test.
So would you say click-through rate manipulation is worth doing? And maybe a second question, is hiring one of these click-through rate manipulation services worthwhile?
Yeah, so click-through rate or CTR manipulation is not something that I would personally recommend doing for 2 reasons. The first reason, you have to keep doing it. So I've actually tested this a few times. There was a business that we had who hired another company to do this, and I kind of watched what happened to their rankings long-term. And what we saw was that as long as the CTR manipulation was happening, their rankings did go up and they kind of stayed up. But then they stopped the campaign. And what we kind of saw was that the rankings basically went back to where they were before. Very similar to what we saw with this test. So what this means for businesses is if your agency is doing this for you, and this is the primary reason how they're getting you to rank, when you cancel with them, you're going to lose all of that benefit. And I don't really like that as an agency owner. Like, I want to try to invest in strategies for my clients that is going to help them long-term and not going to completely screw them over when they cancel. The second thing is, it's a little too risky of a tactic for me. So I'll be honest, I wasn't really well versed on what the risks were with this tactic because it's not something that we do for our clients. But I was listening to a podcast that Craig Campbell did where he interviewed an agency that does CTR manipulation. And I love listening to people that do tactics, even if they're tactics I personally don't do, because it just helps you learn a lot more about how the algorithm works. He said something that was really fascinating to me. He talked about basically this idea is that if Google sees that you're sending fake clicks, and let's say it's, a business that's somewhat high, but like they're not in the top yet, that's sort of natural. But they'll actually do something where they will push the business to, let's say, page 2 or page 3. And then if you are still sending fake clicks when it hits page 2 and 3, they know they're fake clicks and they can actually drop your ranking as a result. So what's fascinating about this is we actually saw this exact pattern with the business that we ran this test on. So what you'll see in this graph here, first of all, there's this massive dip, which is really odd. Like, this guy goes all the way from like being on the top to like, bam, drops down. And what's even more interesting is this is not a pattern that we saw with other businesses. So what you'll see in the second graph is that compared to another business in their market, these fluctuations were not happening to that business. It was only happening to the one that we actually sent the fake traffic to.
So, is CTR manipulation worth the risk? Not really. You might see a quick boost, but the long-term consequences just aren't worth the risk. If you're serious about SEO, focus on strategies that last. SEO should be an investment, not a gamble. So, have you tried CTR manipulation? We'd love to hear your feedback. Tell us if you think it's worth doing below in the comments.